Welcome in, everyone, for today's show on gamification and security awareness training. My name is Elliot Baker, and today's conversation is a special one because we're joined by the foundational thinker behind modern gamification and behavior design, Chou. Whether people realize it or not, many of the digital experiences they use every day have been shaped by Chou's work. His behavioral design frameworks have influenced products and engagement systems used by more than 1.5 billion people across companies that include Lego, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, and many, many more. His best-selling book, Actionable Gamification, helped redefine gamification beyond the simplistic points, badges, and leaderboards mindset and introduced the Octalysis Framework, a deeper model built around the psychological core drives that motivate human behavior. That framework has gone on to influence academia, governments, Fortune 500 companies, healthcare systems, financial institutions, and even Hoxhunt itself, which was purposefully designed around his game design principles of engagement, motivation, challenge, and behavioral reinforcement. So, big thanks to Chou for joining us again today, and here to host this special conversation on the application of gamification and behavioral design to security awareness training is Maxime Cartier, one of the leading voices in human risk management and cybersecurity behavior change. Maxime is our VP of Human Risk here at Hoxhunt, and together they'll explore how the principles behind Octalysis apply directly to the cybersecurity awareness and phishing training. Then the conversation will bridge into Chou's newest work, 10,000 Hours of Play, which expands his behavioral design ideas behind products and platforms into something even bigger: how to design a life, career, and learning journey that people genuinely want to keep playing. Maxime, thank you so much for leading today's conversation, and I will let you take it away from here.
Thank you, Elliot. And first, it's an honor to meet you, Chou. I'm really happy to do this webinar with you today. And to kick things off, I wanted to share maybe a bit of the story of the Hoxhunt co-founders, because they really used, I think, your work also to inspire how the product was built in the beginning. And because first, when they got the idea about Hoxhunt, basically, they reflected on the fact that most breaches started with the human element, talking about 80-90% of the breaches at the time. And it's still the majority of breaches that involve a human element. And that most people hated security training, simply speaking. So they thought about what would be a product that we as end users would like to use that would engage us, and what are the products that we use today that have engaged us. And they thought, of course, well, we're playing games, love playing games. And so how can we play games for hours without realizing that the time is passing? But yet, when we get 10 minutes of a security awareness training, it feels like infinite boredom. So that has led them into the whole gamification idea. And they thought, gamification, is it just about slapping badges and points and maybe leaderboard onto something, or someone must have formalized something in this field? And they found about the Octalysis framework that you developed, as well as some other research on gamification and behavioral design. And that has really been, I think, one of the core inspiration for the design at the initial Hoxhunt product. So that means that we're really happy to have you today and to kind of explore more about these gamification principles. So before we go anywhere, let's level set, because I still hear a lot of confusion around what gamification means. So I mentioned about points and badges and leaderboards. So you often say that it's not about this, right? It's not just about slapping this on top of whatever you do. Your Octalysis framework goes much deeper than that. So first, maybe can you define what gamification is, or at least what it should?
Yeah, so gamification comes from the word to gamify something, right? Which literally means to make it more game-like. And this is where a lot of confusion comes in. Like, what does it mean to make it more game-like? Does it need to have animation, monsters, or does it need to have points or badges? So part of my work is saying, hey, gamification is applying the fun, exciting elements of games into things that are important but boring. You know, healthcare, finance, security, education, all those things. So besides the points and badges, another big misconception is just it's making people play games. But it's none of that. It's really making important activities more enjoyable, like a game.
Yeah, and one thing I've heard you say actually is that gamification is not also about taking something boring and if you do it a certain number of times, or you complete this boring activity, you get points and you get a badge, but it's still boring.
Yeah, a lot of companies, the mistake they do is they will say, hey, we're going to do something really boring. And if you do this boring thing, a lot of times you'll get different rewards. And this is the same as saying, let's create a game that's very, very boring. But if people play this boring game a lot, we'll give them some rewards and badges and achievements, whatnot, which doesn't make sense, right? It's important to think about the activity itself, how to make it more enjoyable, fun. And, as you mentioned, we have the Octalysis framework, and it breaks down all human motivation to the 8 core drives. So, and it's on an octagon. So on the octagon, there's what we call left brain versus right brain core drives. Now I always have to say this because people say, oh, that's debunked. That's not scientific. I'm not saying it's literally geographically left versus right side of the brain, but since it's a framework, left side is left brain core drive, right side, right brain core drive. It's easy to remember. So left side is logical brain, right side is symbolically emotional brain. But the key is the left brain core drive deal with extrinsic motivation, things you do for a reward purpose or a goal, but you don't necessarily enjoy the activity itself. So once you obtain the reward, you hit your goals, or you get used to the reward, it becomes stale, you stop doing the behavior. Whereas good gamification design comes from a lot of right brain core drives. So these are intrinsic motivation, things that you enjoy doing so much that you would even pay money to experience it. And even if we lost all our progress the next day, we lose our points badges, our certificates, our money, we would still want to do this today because that's how we measure quality of lives, how much time we just spend on things we enjoy doing. So I think a lot of gamified programs, instead of saying, let's just give extrinsic rewards, it's important to think about how to make it intrinsically more interesting to engage with.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's where some of our security programs sometimes get stuck, bolting rewards, so external rewards or extrinsic motivation onto something that is still a core, right? So we need to think about how to create that intrinsic motivation and how to make these activities, as you said, also enjoyable. And your framework, so it identifies 8 core drives that motivate human behavior. And what I found interesting, or one thing that I found interesting from my cybersecurity perspective, is that you separate them between white hat and black hat techniques, which is also a term that we use in cybersecurity. The white hat, the ethical hackers, and the black hat, the bad guys, basically. And in my experience, I found that a lot of security awareness programs, they tend to lean on more of the black hat techniques. I'm thinking about unpredictability through phishing simulations, avoidance through fear messaging, right? Making, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to get hacked. And that's really bad. We're going to lose tons of money. And I suspect that we're leaving a lot on the table when we focus only on this side. So from where you sit, which of those 8 core drives are maybe most underused in security awareness training?
Yeah, so earlier we talked about left versus right on the octagon, and you're mentioning top versus bottom. So the top are white hat motivation core drives. So these are core drives that make people feel powerful, in control, they feel good, but there's no sense of urgency, so people procrastinate. Whereas the black hat motivation core drives on the bottom are ones that make people feel urgent, obsessed, even addicted. But in the long run, it could leave a bad taste in their mouths because they feel like they're not in control of their own behavior, so they could burn out. And this is for a reason, because the black hat core drives ties to our survival instincts, right? Avoiding danger, going after scarce resources and exploring new lands. So it helps us survive. But that's why we feel like we're not in control of our own behavior, because we feel like we're hardwired to engage with our environment that way. But we don't feel happy if we're constantly just in a black hat environment. We want to feel more human. What is love? What is the meaning of my life? How do I grow myself and be creative? So I think it's normal in that this industry focused a lot on black hat motivation, especially loss and avoidance, because it is preventing a negative thing from happening. But if someone's constantly in that state of loss and avoidance, it's, your constant state of fear, you burn out, right? So people have a defense mechanism and say, well, it's not going to be so bad. I don't have to worry about it. And in the loss and avoidance literature, it's actually very clear. There's interesting studies. I don't know if one dig deep into it, but basically the conclusion is that if people know there's a problem, but they don't know exactly how to solve it, then their brain goes into denial. Say, it's not that bad. If they know how to solve a problem, but they're not familiar how bad the problem is, then they also don't care. It's like, well, why should I spend time? It's only when they know the problem and the way to solve it together that's when they take action. That's when they have behavior. So that's there, but also people burn out if they're constantly just in fear. So like you said, it is useful to introduce that concept of white hat motivation core drives, the idea that people feel like they're improving themselves, achieving mastery, the idea that people are using creativity, and also they have meaning and purpose. And for instance, instead of just saying, I'm doing this because my boss wants me to do it, I think cybersecurity actually has this epic meaning and calling, because the people who are doing cybersecurity are the ones that are defending, the digital world in general. Because if no one did cybersecurity, then the whole digital world, right, is filled with attacks and scammers and all that. And no one would ever be able to use this anymore. They wouldn't be use phones. They wouldn't be use the internet, because this whole place is down. So that work of cybersecurity actually has meaning and purpose, because society would almost not function if it didn't exist, right? And then back to your question about the most underutilized, I think it's core drive 3, empowerment of creativity and feedback. And that's on the right top, which is white hat intrinsic, right? It's the longest lasting type of motivation. And this is more about scenario based training, being creative, meaningful choices, self expression. So I've seen some good implementations like, okay, you're playing this simulation where you are the attacker, right? And it's like, all right, let me see what routers are not secure with their Wi-Fi. Let me do this. So when the user is playing a game, basically, right, pretending to be the attacker, and it's kind of interesting to see, oh, look, there's a hole over here. That's perfect. That makes me happy. How could someone do such a stupid mistake? And then when they leave the game, like, oh wow, I'm making that stupid mistake. I'm making hackers very happy. Attackers very happy on that. So scenario based, I think, is really, really important. Or, there are companies that says, hey, there's a team competition, and, as you know, some companies will send, fake phishing emails to you guys. And if you click that link, then you get caught, and you'll lose points for your team. So I think there should be more about that. People feeling I am playing a game. I'm trying to use teamwork and do better, as opposed to constantly saying, hey, prevent a problem, prevent a problem.
Yeah, it's such a good answer, and a lot of interesting elements. So I took some notes actually while you were talking, because one thing that you were mentioning is that it's important for people to feel like they can do something about this, right? That it's not, well, there's nothing I can do, right? We're going to be hacked anyway. And that feeling, so you need to have the perception of the risk, that it's real, but also understand that you can do something about it, right? And that's self-efficacy. And self-efficacy, as you, I think, wanted to mention, is that it's a core element in behavior change. If you don't have self-efficacy, you're not going to take the behaviors, right? Because you feel it's useless. So that's something that we should definitely really push for, and not just say, hey, those are all the risks, but this is what you can do to protect yourself, to protect the company, and maybe even to protect your family, your kids, your older relatives. And I think that relates then to what you call the epic meaning, right? Of course, cybersecurity has a meaning. Me working in cybersecurity, I'm happy to do it because I feel, well, we're doing something right for the world. It's not just a commercial endeavor where we're doing something right for the world. And maybe it can also translate for people into, if we help them not only to protect their company, or not even only to protect themselves, but how can you protect your family at home in the cyberspace? How can you protect your kids? How can you protect your older relatives?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, when it comes to core drive 7, unpredictable curiosity, like low probability events, right? The psychology study shows that the more people can imagine it in their heads, the more they believe it is likely to happen. So there's an interesting study where they said, hey, would you buy life insurance to cover you dying from anything anywhere? And a lot of people are like, well, I think it's very low probability that I'll die, so I don't need this. But if you say, hey, are you going to buy insurance that covers you dying from an earthquake in California? And if you're like, oh yeah, I heard there's a lot of earthquakes in California, I really need this, right? Even though the second one is way worse than the first one, right? The first one is everything anywhere, and the second one is only California earthquakes. But because people can imagine in their heads the imagery of that, they think, oh wow, that's a high probability. And this is why all the lottery systems, they're always like, look, this guy has his $23 million. Look at his life. His life has changed. So when you see it happening, and they'll tell you to imagine what would you do if you won the lottery. If you see it in your head, you think it's more likely. So if you apply that kind of study to this and people, and let's say that a lot of employees feel like, no, that's not going to happen. And it's like solo probably, I don't have to really care. Sometimes it could even be like a drill simulation of saying, okay, let's do this thing where we did get breach. Now everyone needs to see what they need to do right now in the next 5 to 10 minutes when we got breached. Like, how do you stop? And it's like, oh, wow, I see this happening. And they can imagine what they need to do immediately in case of a breach. So then their brain thinks, okay, it's more likely to happen.
Yeah, all of this. And I think though also you say that it was, I think you say that it was part of this is called that drive 3, but you mentioned the 7 also. In security, some teams often lean into this, what I would say black hat or black patterns things, because, and we're always trying at Hoxhunt to find the right balance between the two sides, and that can be difficult. For example, you mentioned scenarios, and at Hoxhunt, we created this feature a couple of years called Fish a Friend. And what it is in practice is that you can create a phishing email and send it to one of your colleagues. And that can be really fun. It allows you to fish on your colleagues, but that can also become very competitive. Some coworkers might create ultra targeted spear fishes that are really difficult to spot, and therefore people are very likely to click on. So we always recommend our customers to run it as a short campaign, right? Not something that is on all the time, because people can quickly burn out, get tired of it. But to have it, it's a great way to engage people for a couple of weeks, for a month, right? During their cybersecurity awareness months in October, for example.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting practice, right? And you could say, well, obviously my coworkers know so much about me, but if people out there, they actually have a lot of data about you. They can answer a lot of things. So it's dangerous. I think it is interesting where you put a limit to how much it happens, but it can be ongoing. So what that means is, obviously even your clients, or the companies that use your technology or solutions, they don't want their employees to all day long be playing this game where they're not working. They're just trying to send, pretending to be a phishing attacker, right? But if there's a limitation, it could run the whole year, but it says each person only has 2 of these per year, right? And so that throughout this year, you'll get some of these phishing emails because your coworker wants to get you or someone else. Maybe you'll get 20 in total, not sure. But then you're on the defensive for the whole year. So you might not fall for the other ones. And of course, there's only 2, so it's limited. But it's like those April Fool's Day joke, right? It's like, oh, you got to be a little bit more defensive on that. The problem with the short bursts is sometimes people are extra vigilant during that period where they know people are doing it. And then once it ends, people just relax and they're like, okay, I can forget about all of this forward in my back. So I think a little bit of an ongoing, but not high tension, high intensity type of engagement could be beneficial.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And we do have, of course, limitations in the Fisher Friend types of simulations in terms of how many you can send, how many someone can receive. But it's a good point that it could make people feel like, okay, I need extra vigilance for this month, and then I'm fine. I can relax and chill. But that's why we do also continuous phishing simulations, and we reinforce that it's not just a one-time exercise, but that's something that you need to have all year long.
There's actually a anime show where a killer was going to kill a guy that's pretty much unkillable.
Yeah.
So he sets a bounty to say, we need to kill him in 30 days and there's a big cash prize. But he set it on purpose because he was going to kill the guy an hour after the bounty ends. So the guy so the guy's on high tension for a whole month. And after the month, he's tired and then he relaxes. And that the moment he relaxes, he gets killed by but before he dies, no, see, there's no more bounty on me. Why did you do that? And he's like, well, I set the bounty just so you would relax afterwards.
That's a great example. And at the same time, you don't want to, for phishing emails, it's really a muscle memory that we want to create, because you don't want people to feel in a state of constant vigilance where, it takes mental effort to always be vigilant. You cannot ask people to always be vigilant. So it's really about creating a muscle memory. It's what we're trying to do, so that it's something that you can keep and do all without too much mental effort.
I think the big thing is making sure when they see something that's weird, they don't panic, right? Because a lot of the attacks there is a big problem, that big crisis, and you need to act immediately. And and this is building on your design because I think it's a really good one. So oftentimes during this period, obviously, if you're stressed and be vigilant, like, oh, we might get hacked, might get that, you could burn out. But if you're constantly thinking, my friends might send me this funny phishing attack, and if I click the link, they'll laugh at my face. It's a little more playful. You're not as stressed. So when you see an actual attacker, you're calm, right? Haha, this probably is one of my friends doing it, and you're laughing. And it's like, oh, actually, and you don't click on it. And if you report it, then you get points, right? Let's say that I don't know how you do that. So then you hold a calm mind when you see something that could be dangerous. I think that mentality of just knowing your coworkers might have done it feels a lot less stressful, and people could probably hold that for longer.
Yeah, that's a great point. And next, I want to put some real concerns to you, Yukai, because there are things that I hear nearly every week from security awareness managers, from CISOs, chief information security officer, and I'd love to hear your honest and obviously expert reaction to each of these concerns of worry. And the first one is probably the most common pushback that I get. It's people saying, "Oh, gamification is great, but it doesn't work for all their employees." Right? The assumption is that gamification is maybe more of a millennial thing, or only works for people who play video games, but not for everyone. So what's your
Yeah.
response to this?
Yeah. And I do hear that a lot, but at least from our experience, the older generation actually responds better to gamification, as long as they don't know it's called gamification, because there's a stigma there. And there's a reason for this. The older generation, when they grew up, they didn't have all the stimuli, right? They did things because of perseverance through hardship and just working hard on what they should do. But when they actually get into an environment where there's a sense of purpose and meaning to their work, there's a sense of growth and accomplishment, there's more autonomy and expressive ways to do things. There's a compensation package that kind of matters and connects to their what they do, their performance, and they feel more socially appreciated. They're like, wow, this place is amazing. Sign me, I want to be here, right? It's the younger generation that's much harder because they've been spoiled growing up with games everywhere. They're saving the world in every game they play. In a chess tournament, you could be number 70 and get a medal that says you won a nice medal to feel accomplished. So when they go into a company environment and they see gamification, they'll say, well, this is kind of interesting, but this is nothing compared to the game I play, right? So you actually need better gamification design to motivate the younger generation. And we have some projects. I wouldn't say lots; it's not the majority, but some projects like we work with Walgreens to motivate senior citizens that have retired to go to the local Walgreens to do health checkups, right? And they don't even check their email. So our campaign needs to involve like sending really cool mail package that brings out their nostalgia. And we need to do phone calls and even connect to the helper of the senior citizen, all that stuff, right? But it could be enjoyable. And I think, like I said, the stigma is in the term game, right? If you replace the game with, say, hey, let's have competition in our organization, or let's have group challenges, right? Then no one will say, "Oh, this doesn't work for a serious company or for senior citizens." People feel like, "Hey, that's actually enjoyable to do."
Yeah, and now that you say this, my parents are in their 60s. They never played game, as well at my age, basically, or video games at least. But now they're not always, but they're often on their phones playing like these phone games, not Candy Crush, but the likes. And yeah, I had them over for the weekend, and we did a lot of stuff, visited the city, and then the next day, my mom said, "Oh, I didn't play all my games, so I lost actually in one of them because I forgot to play for one day." And both of my parents, my dad, I would have never thought that it would, that's actually, as you say, actually, they're actually quite receptive to it.
Yeah, actually, my mother-in-law, she was 78 when this happened. Like, she's got her first smartphone like only 3 years prior, like 75, right? And at 78, one day she says, "Oh, I forgot my phone at home," and we're like, "Oh, this, she probably can adjust to this very well because she lived 75 years without this, right? She only took it 3 years. And she said, I feel so lost and directionless without my phone. I don't know I'm so disconnected to everything. I'm like, oh, even someone, who picked up 75, they also feel like, wow, once I get this thing that can stimulate my brain, right? I can watch things I want, enjoy things I enjoy when it's there, they still get attracted to it. So again, I think it's mostly a misconception that could be resolved.
Yeah. The second misconception I hear, or misconception, I don't know, but what people tell me also sometimes is, oh, we're too serious for this. We're a bank or hospital or government agency. We're a serious organization and security is a serious topic. So if we make it fun, people won't take it seriously.
Yeah. So, I started working gamification in 2003. So I definitely see that a lot. And luckily over the years, there's enough case studies that are serious and powerful from, big enterprise companies. SAP, right, is using it. And a lot of companies like, oh, wow, like we're enterprise software, but SAP is, what we want to become like one day. If they use gamification, who are we to say, we're too serious? Or, one of our biggest case studies is with a Brazilian bank where we gamify all their employees' work, and they increase their recurring profits by 48%, which ends up being 1.06 billion US dollars per year difference. And because of that, they went from the second largest public bank in Brazil to the number one public bank in Brazil, right? And so, I've been invited to assist 8 different governments with gamification, and one is we mentioned this earlier to help Ukraine's government working with Zelensky's team directly to figure out how to defend against Russia and how do you rebuild after the war, right? So I think nowadays when people have that concern, instead of just explain, look, gamification is not playing games, it's not about being serious or not, it's about making things enjoyable or engaging. I think now we just point to look at these other companies that, number one, they're serious, they're banks, they're bigger than you, they're more serious than you, they do it, and they've gotten amazing results, triple digit increase in their metrics. And most people, when they see that, it's hard for them to stick with the same argument. They may still say, well, that's different. We're a unique company. From our culture, da da da. So, but at least the we're serious argument completely goes away when you point to those case studies.
Yeah. It's great stories that you share. And also just saying that, okay, again, gamification is about making things enjoyable. It's not just about creating a game for people to lose their time or whatever. It's about making something enjoyable. And I think that's applicable to any type of company or organization.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that when I explain the Brazilian bank case study, the details, multiple times they'll say, "Oh, but wait, isn't it bad because these employees are not doing work; they're playing this game, right?" And and you have to say, "Well, you know, that's true, but you have to remember the bank made 1.1 extra billion dollars, right? So if you want to make an extra $1 billion and you are willing to tolerate your employees enjoying their work and having fun at the company, then yeah, this might be for you." But if you want your employees to suffer so much that you rather give up $1 billion, yeah, maybe this isn't something that you would want to do, right? And they'll say like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, then we should do it. And then after I introduce a few more elements, they're like, oh no, but look, they're not working. They're just like doing this gamified thing, and I have to repeat that same point. It's like, oh right, I remember this. Yes, I can continue. So it's just the default mentality. The world and our school systems have taught us that if it's enjoyable, if you're having fun, it's bad. It doesn't
Mm.
produce results, and you should stop it, right? And which I don't think should be the case about the world.
I love this. I have 2 other concerns that I hear. The third one is rewards attract the wrong people. It's a bit more subtle, but I hear sometimes from people that, okay, if we do a competition and we add rewards, we don't engage with like the competitive people who care about the prizes. They want the gift card, they want the tablet, but they don't actually care about security. So have you heard this? And do you think it's a real risk or a misunderstanding of what rewards do?
Yeah, I think this statement is true because the design is just about extrinsic rewards, right? Obviously, if you say, do this thing you don't care about and we'll give you a reward, they still don't care about it. But they'll just get the reward, right? Now, you still get benefits because by doing the actions that get you the reward, you still have better trading. You still acquire some knowledge. Depending on how you design, everything is depending on how you design it. But it's like, hey, you only get the reward if you can recite the top 20 principles of cybersecurity, right? Things that you need to do to de-risk, right? So you'll get results, but they still don't care about it. But like I said, oftentimes you want to use epic meaning and calling to make people understand why that's important. You want to use social influence. I think within an organization, social influence and relatedness in terms of, work, interacting with your colleagues, competition, collaboration, social appreciation, those really work really well. So most of our case studies we've seen, when we implement a corporate gamification launch or campaign, at the beginning, usually you'll see, 40% of the people joining, and this is the group you're talking about. It's like, hey, this is fun. This looks interesting. Let me try. But 60% of people usually don't start off jumping on. Like, again, this is a voluntary program now. And then if you design it well, week by week, people are talking about it. They're excited about it. They're comparing their scores to each other, and possibly they're getting special rewards from that gamified program. Then what we see is those people feel like they have this fear of missing out, right? FOMO, which is which have a loss and avoid. Is like, oh, this is interesting. Can I sign up? I want to sign up. And so in many of our case studies, we show that within 2 to 3 months, it goes beyond 90%. Like there was like the only 99.9, the only person who didn't sign up to it was a woman on pregnant leave. So and there was even an employee who had to take a sick day, and he asked his manager if when he's at home, could he still log into his portal to check his rewards, right? So I think if you design it well, you could get more types of people to join, and have a more broad cover of the company in terms of everyone's being more secure.
Yeah. I think the percentage that you said are interesting. I had similar percentages when I started in my previous organizations. I deployed Hoxhunt, but first I deployed it as an opt-in. Said, hey, if you want to join, and learn more about how to protect yourself at home, at work, and get those stars and get those prizes, I got about 30% of people who opted in, which wasn't bad for a security program, to be honest. So I was already happy. But after this, we decided to deploy it to everyone because it worked really well for the 30% of people. So it's not an opt-in anymore. Everyone is part of the program. And we saw months after month, as you say, that the engagement increased months after months, that more and more people were joining the program, reaching 70, 80%, right? Over a few months, over years. And this increased continuously. And we see this with all of our customers today at Hoxhunt, that months after months, year after year in the organizations that use Hoxhunt, the engagement continued to increase. And that was actually linked to my last concern, is that sometimes I hear people get bored eventually, right? Because it's a game, so they will pay it, but after a while they get bored. Right? Even great gamified experience, at some point it will lose its pull. So how do you think about long-term engagement?
Yeah, so this is still about how good the game design is. So we divide a user's journey to 4 phases: discovery, onboarding, scaffolding, and endgame. And so endgame is the phase where it's like people have been there for a long time, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And what is the core drive that motivate them to keep going? Are they mentors in the system? Are they still using the creativity? Is there still surprises? So yeah, like you said, most games people play for 2 to 6 months and they leave, right? But if you look at, for instance, World of Warcraft, I think they celebrate their 17-year anniversary and people are still playing like crazy. And in fact, when people are very angry at World of Warcraft, it's not because they don't want to play anymore. It's because they still want to play, but they think the company designed it not as strongly as before. And Candy Crush has a very strong longevity, right? Candy Crush, like you said, they actually reach elderly people. My mother she's 70 and she likes to play Candy Crush a lot. And, they've been running for probably 15 years now, right? And they're not slowing down. There are many games out there. When you design a good end game, you have a longevity. Even Minecraft has been like around 50 years. And I see kids who say Minecraft is my favorite game at 6 years old, and it's my favorite game at 22 years old, right? And most of the time, whatever a 7-year-old think is cool, a 9-year-old think is very lame, right? And so it's the game design. And it's back to those core drives where if you design for left brain core drives or black hat core drives, people burn out very easily. But if you have core drive 3, empowerment of creativity and feedback, right? Self-expression, meaningful traits of strategy, it's evergreen, just like chess doesn't have to keep adding new rules to be engaging. It's been engaging for centuries. They don't have to redesign the game over and over. So again, a lot of it is just based on how well you can design the gamified system as opposed to any fundamental flaw of gamification itself.
Yeah. And I'm going back just to one thing you said before. You shared the story of someone who was on leave and still wanted to participate. And that made me think about, we have streaks in Hoxhunt. It's quite a classic mechanism. But the power of it honestly surprises me every day, because when users of Hoxhunt lose their streak, they get a bit upset. And we've had people email us because they were on holiday maybe and they received a phishing simulation, they didn't report it, they lost their streak. And what became a number one requested feature by end users was to have a holiday mode, to be able to pause the training while they were on holiday and to not lose their stars and their streak. Otherwise, some people were like, even if I'm on maternity leave, but I continue to check my inbox because I don't want to miss the Hoxhunt emails. So now we have this holiday mode so that people don't lose their streak.
Yeah, so this is a classic using white hat to balance the stress of black hat strategy with Octalysis. And this is why, I really recommend everyone to learn the Octalysis framework, because then you'll know the different consequences of your design. So for streaks, most people think it's core drive to develop an accomplishment, right? Yay, which is white hat. 3 days in a row, 5 days in a row, 10 days in a row, you feel really accomplished. But over time, it inevitably becomes black hat, which means that people are just scared of losing their streak. And while they still have their streak, all the black hat components are there. They're obsessed. They want to come on every day. They will never miss a single day. They don't want to go on long flights because what if they get off and they miss that cutoff point? However, once they lose their streak, right, the black hat burnout happens too. They're like, oh, I'm back to zero. Okay, that was a good run. I don't think I'll ever do 200 days in a row anymore. And they leave because they remember how stressful it was to keep it alive. So that's why in many of our designs, we want people to have certain white hat ways to almost feel less stressed about it. So that's why you'll say, oh, every 6 days you come back in a row, you'll earn a holiday, like a 7th day, right? So over time, you're like, oh, I have 5 or I have 20 holidays, so I don't have to be stressed of accidentally missing 1 or 2 days or being whatnot. Or hey, you missed your streak, but if you come back and you do 5 days in a row, then you'll get your streak back, right? A way to save it. There is a game mechanic that I call the bootleg quest, which is, you graduate from the streak. So if once you reach 100 days in a row, you complete the whole thing and you get a big achievement symbol. Maybe you have your benefits and power ups, and then you don't have to be stressed anymore. And it's useful because the first 100 days helps you build a habit, right? You need streaks at the early on, but later on you're already doing it. So what your team suggested is, hey, can we have this way to make it less stressful? And we still want to maintain our streak, but we don't want to constantly be afraid of losing it. And it's beneficial for you to keep it because you don't want them to burn out and leave the system forever. So yeah, there's like hundreds of these little details about how do you make up for the weakness of a certain game mechanic while retaining the strengths of it.
Yeah. And it's always about, as you say, finding this balance and the white hat mechanics, as you say, that will balance black hat ones. I'm conscious of time and I want to make sure that we talk also about because I could talk about this forever. I think really enjoying this discussion so far, but I want to use the last part of our time today to bring in your new book also, 10,000 Hours of Play. And the premise is about treating life kind of like a video game and with 6 steps to level up. So can you tell us what prompted this work and what the central idea is?
Yeah, I'll also prepare some slides for it too. But I'll say the reason, and your exact question, right? The reason why I want to do this is because, as you know, I'm very well known for my Octalysis framework. And, I share with a lot of people learn that. But I thought I published my Octalysis framework in 2012. But what really changed my life the most was in 2003. I started gamifying my own life, and that led me down the journey of starting my first company and acquiring a lot of knowledge and that enabled me to create the framework in 2012. So I really wanted to share the knowledge of how to gamify your own life and add meaning and purpose to everything you're doing. So, I had some early slides for introduction, but one of the things that is interesting these days is that, apparently impresses people the most, is if you go on any LLM like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude and ask who's the number one gamification expert in the world, it will pretty much always say my name. I always think it's a fun exercise. Anyone listening and watching could try that right now, see if it works on your region or your computer or whatnot. But yeah, so this is the reason, because I just play my life like a game, right? So that's actionable gamification. You can check it out. But then that led to my second book, which is 10,000 Hours of Play. And I think a lot of people are familiar with the 10,000 hours principle that was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers. He didn't come up with it. He cited, other people who did the research. But the idea is that if you spend 10,000 hours honing a craft, then at the end you become world class at something. And there's debates about whether it's 10,000 hours or not. That's not important to me. My important thing is 10,000 hours is a lot of time to invest into anything. So if you gamify your life correctly, then it wouldn't be 10,000 hours of blood, sweat, and tears. It'll be 10,000 hours of just having fun, enjoying yourself. And at the end of all this gameplay, you are successful in life. You have the highest skills on the Earth server, and and you're accomplishing all your goals, and you live life with meaning. So, as you can see here, it's basically about 6 steps. The first 3 is knowing yourself, and the next 3 is growing yourself. So, choose your game, which is your mission, know your attributes or talents, select your role, which is specialty, enhance your skills, which is a craft, build your lines, which is network, achieve your quest, which is milestones. And we're gonna go really fast. I don't think we have enough time to go through the full thing, but so this is this is the Octalysis Framework. For those who don't know, this is the visual that this 8 it's on an octagon, and like I said, left brain, right brain, and all that stuff. So people have a visual in front of them. So for 10K HP, again, these are the 6 components. And so choosing your game is really about, understanding why you do things in life, right? Because different people like to play different games. Some people like to play real-time strategy games, or some people like to play poker or golf, so the traditional game Scrabble. And it's important to know, what are you passionate about, and what makes your life worth living. And so for some people, their life game is solving climate change, or obtaining peace, or creating a faster search. And it could just be, hey, climbing in my organization, or having a good family. The key is not saying your game has to be ambitious or whatnot, but it has to be something you feel like is meaningful to you, that is purposeful, that it makes your life really good. And at this point, you don't even think about your talents here, your attributes, because that's another step. Because I believe if you were passionate about trucks, let's say you only have a talent to be a janitor, right? You would still be happier being a janitor for a truck company than a music company. And of course, a lot of people are passionate about music, and they would be happier being a janitor at a music company than a truck company, right? And so in the case of cybersecurity, I think it's important for the people in the field to think about, what is the purpose? What is the game within cybersecurity, right? And so it's like the job is to prevent breaches. The career is, let's say, protect companies' data. But like I said earlier, the game itself could be defending digital trust itself, which is that epic meaning calling. So then step 2 is knowing your attributes. So once you know your game, right, you have to figure out, okay, what kind of talents and skills would I have? What are my inborn advantages? And in games, it's nice because they'll show you your strength, your agility, your stamina, your strength. And in real life, we don't get to see any of this. We have to figure out slowly by ourselves. So we have to think, okay, what are things I do better than others? It could be humor, it could be patience, could be, doing math quickly, it could be communication. So we usually have like a strength triangle to figure out what are your top strengths. The top 5, I call them edge strengths, that, if they synergize, they become really strong. So this is me, 2010, when I first started thinking about this. And this is 2024. I'm good at associated thinking, empathetic intelligence, and just blazing through. I also have some weaknesses. What I'm not good at. I'm very bad at observing my physical environment. I don't know. I'm always living in my head, thinking about concepts. So whatever's happening around me, like even a fire hydrant that's in front of my door that I walk in every day for 7 years, I never notice it, right? So I cannot be a detective, because I don't notice all these little details around me. So you can use that for a lot of people. When it comes to cybersecurity, there's actually some attributes that other industries might feel like that's annoying. We don't like it, but here it's very strong. So for instance, being very detail oriented, or some people's like, oh, you're so anal, right? That actually is a strong attribute, because you're like always making sure, double checking and that no one can come in with an attack, right? Adversarial empathy, thinking in someone else's head, and thinking about, okay, how they could attack you. I think that's an attribute that other industries might not need, but this one is actually a strong thing. Potential boredom tolerance, crisis calm. We talked about if you have a lot of emotional stability when something hits you, that's a strong attribute. Storytelling is unique. Most people don't think of cybersecurity with storytelling, but you need to convince, right, executives to give you a budget, right, and to tell employees to say, hey, this is important, let's do it. Even when we do the scenario-based gamification campaigns, you need good storytelling. So that is actually a strong attribute to make someone a better cybersecurity professional. Diplomatic patience, right? You can't just say, no, 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 no. You have to say, you have to communicate in a way that makes people feel like they're respected and they're happy. So you get what you want and they feel they're still fine. And there's different, also attributes about being a leader, like vision, execution, empathy. And if you have, 2 out of 3, you could be a commander, coach, or manager, OP. So I cover all this in the book. Again, I'm just like doing a quick flash over that. But once you know your attributes, that's when you kind of think about what is your role, your specialty in this game. Basically, in games you can choose like attackers, tanks, whatnot, right? So I actually have something called the role sphere, which is your aspirational role. What do you want to become? Your identity role, your occupation role, specialization role. And I think in cybersecurity, there's also a variety of roles you can take because, a lot of people think, oh, you have to be like the guy with the hoodie, sitting in a dark room to defend against the hackers. That's the only role in cybersecurity, right? There's a lot of different type of roles in terms of, detectives, architects, storyteller, diplomats, and this makes it a bit more fun and interesting and also more inclusive, right? It's like, oh, well, you could just be take one of these roles and you're contributing value. Documentation, right? You're good at documentation. That's your role on the team. And, you can apply this to other games, but in cybersecurity, you're also playing a valuable role in it. So once you know your role, you got to figure out your skills, right? So in games, you got to uh, learn new skills over time, and it's based on your attributes. So attributes are what you're born with. Skills are, skills are things you can acquire. So you can't take a class and suddenly have more, let's say, emotional resilience, right? Unless you use little techniques to cover that up. But you can, over the years, you can grow that, but you can take a class to learn about, SEO or cyber attacks, whatnot. So you talk about it's good to have a few synergetic skills here. We also have a skill triangle. I prepared a little bit more that we have time for, as you can see. But I think it's important to say, like, okay, what are the skills that just always been important in the cybersecurity world? And I'm not an expert at cybersecurity, so this is what I think could be there. Obviously, experts can tell you what are the things that are more. But I think that there are also new skills that the highest level cybersecurity experts should acquire, right? And a lot of it is based on AI and LLM because the attackers, they're playing the game of attacking you, right? If you think you're too serious to play a game, like the people who are attacking you, they're playing a game. So if you don't outcompete them through this game and they have all these new arsenal tools, they have new weapons, right? And you don't upgrade your weapon, then it'll be like they're driving tanks against you and you're throwing spears at them, right? So I think these are just new skills. And then building allies, building alliances. So these are people that are playing the same game, but they have different strengths and roles to help you and whatnot. It's Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. One is innovative marketer, one is technology expert. They become a good combo. In 10KHP, we talked about there's a faction, which is basically your entire profession, right? People who work in cybersecurity. You feel connected to them, but you don't know them, all of them. There's no organization that governs them. Then there's a guild, which is there is a government body, there's a leader, and they can set directions, whatnot. There might be accountability. And there's your party, which is your immediate team that you work with. And, and even your party, there could be different roles, right? There could be the tank, which is, the manager that absorbs the political damage. There could be the quest giver that's the executive sponsor. Again, this is all straightforward, but it makes it a little more fun and interesting to think about and go into. And then there's the stuff that, based on my small research, like, hey, these are allies that outside of the organization, even that could be useful to build in the peacetime. So when I learned about your local FBI cyber agent has this infra guard thing and CAT thing that they work with companies to figure out, okay, what are problems, what are attacks, so they can catch the criminals better. Sector IC, I don't know if people say ISAC or ISAC, all that stuff, right? There's allies you can build to make you a stronger team together and play the game even better. Then there's finally quests. These are things you do to build new skills, get closer to beating your game, and to level up with your allies. So you build more chemistry together. So, build towards beating the game and whatnot. So I kind of put down all the quests I did in my life and what I learned from that. Some things I did gave me confidence and visual models, blah, blah, blah. So the book describes a lot of that. How do you see your life as an ongoing list of quests and my tasks? So there's the hierarchy. There's sagas, arc, major quests, minor quests, and tasks. In terms of cybersecurity, I think it's just useful to think, okay, most people, when they say that, it's too big to plan their whole thing, but it's like, all right, this week, what can you do? Are there some quests you can do to become a better role, right, in your cybersecurity team? And the next month, are there better things to do? Yeah, and usually when you beat your game, you fulfill your life with meaning, you make every day count, and you actually have a lot of fun. That's what I love about all my work. It's just like you just think you're having fun all day long, but people respect you for that, and you're getting good results. Yeah. So anyway, that's a very quick overview of 10,000 hours of play. And I'm sorry, I kind of just stole the show without letting you jump in. But yeah, that's it. And if you have any questions, happy to dig down on any of that.
Thanks for presenting this. I think now I want to gamify my life too when I see this, because who doesn't want to make their life more enjoyable, enrich their game mission. And I love the last slide that you had that was about the steps that you can take now, right? Step 6 was about quests. And I wanted to see, okay, what can people also take away and start doing right now? Maybe you can go back to this slide, just if you have it close by, just before.
Yeah, and this is just an example. I think anyone in the industry, this is why we have mentors as your ally, right? They can probably come with even better quests, but I thought, okay, meaning a person's important. So, you want to understand why you're doing what you're doing, right? So, think about a reason to make you more excited and pumped up, as opposed to, oh, I have to do it. And this change in mentality helps a lot. Like recently, I have a coworker. He said that the moment he ordered a new powerful computer, his old computer started having these problems, and he can't he has to shut it down and reopen it again and again. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad that I bought the new one. But this one is pissing me off. And I said, what if you think about a different angle, that this machine is beat up and struggling and it's beyond its limit, but it's still working hard for you. And then finally it sees you order a new laptop. It's like, okay, finally someone capable will take over my task. So yes, my mission is complete, and they finally rest and fall. And they're like, oh, wow, I never thought about it. Now I feel super appreciative of this old laptop, right? And so sometimes it's just a mentality change, and your motivation and how you work, how you engage with something changes. So, write your why in one sentence. I think it's important in all things. Think about your party, your allies. Like I said, there's the internal ones. I know I flashed to them, but you can think about your organization. Who's your party? Who should you work closely with to increase in your game? It doesn't have to be a pure cybersecurity role. Like any game you're playing in your life, you want to think about party, and then think about some under-celebrated attribute and see, okay, this is an attribute I have, and how do I make the most out of it, right? And like I said, if you're good at, let's say, adapting to new environments, if you're always staying in the same environment, then you're wasting a talent, right? You're just like everyone else. But if you are able to change different environments that you think is obviously useful, then you become a superhero because everyone can't do it and you can do it. So yeah, these are some examples of what you could do.
Thank you so much. The ally one, I cannot beat some, because it's one thing I tell kind of every security awareness manager I meet is you cannot do this job alone. Your strongest allies are usually outside of the security team. Actually, there's the comms people, the HR, IT support, or help desk, local champions across the business. So I love this framing. Thank you so much, Yukai. We're also going to share in the chat the reference of the book and the link to the website, because there's a lot of information on the website also, I've seen. Thanks so much for this discussion. We were really appreciative of the time that we spent together. I learned a lot. I want to gamify my life again, and I hope that it will inspire people who have listened also today.
Yeah. And everyone who's watching, they're doing a quest, right? Watching and learning your webinar. So I encourage them to keep doing that.